Welcome to Magic Academy podcast, Brian and Erin. So great to have you both, and our honor to have you today.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Thanks so much. Yeah, excited for this this podcast here tonight.
Excellent. So I think we'll be very curious to learn a little bit about you. Brian, you're the inventor, CEO of Storytime AI, and Erin, you're leading the Gateway School for Special Needs Students. Let's introduce to our audience a little bit about you and how everything got started. So let's start with Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Gianni. My name is Brian Carlson. I am the co-founder of Storytime AI, co-founded Storytime with a good friend of mine, Scott Quinlan. Prior to that, I was a CEO and co-founder of a business called eThink Education. eThink was acquired in 2020 by Learning Technologies Group as a part of a roll-up that's now called OpenLMS. We were an open source provider of learning management system service built on the open source system called Moodle, which is used by many colleges, universities all over the world, K to nonprofits. And so, yeah, had a prior to that, kind of a long education career. I was also a teacher prior to that. So all over the map, but very focused on education technologies throughout my career.
So you have a full spectrum of experiences in learning development.
Yes, I've been all over the place.
Which is good. That gives you, yes, that helps. Excellent. So Erin.
Yeah, I've also been a little bit all over the place. So I am a licensed and certified speech language pathologist kind of by trade. So my undergraduate degrees are in special education and speech language pathology. And then my graduate degrees in speech language pathology, which is what allowed me to practice for almost 15 years before going back to school and getting my PhD in education policy. So really focusing, my dissertation was on the kindergarten and how kids learn and behave during kindergarten. And so the early part of my career was spent really working on individual student outcomes. So I was a speech language pathologist, I was a therapist, I was in the schools, I was in hospitals, I was in rehab facilities, doing the work with the kids day to day. And then professionally, I was just interested in making a change. And so I was fortunate about 7 years ago to land this job as the CEO of the Hearing and Speech Agency. And one of our program areas is the Gateway School. And so what I love about it is that, like Brian, I have that background of being that in the classroom, of working with the kids, understanding the needs of the kids and the therapists and the families, but being able to impact change on a different level, slightly more macro level in my executive director, CEO role now. And so it's been a really exciting journey for me over the last 7 years to blend that micro with the macro. And one of the ways I keep myself sane is through running. And I was fortunate enough to meet Ryan at a running event in the fall. And so that's kind of what brings us together here today.
I didn't know that you run, Brian.
Yeah, I used to be a big runner, and lately I got pulled back in by some old friends. A friend of mine, Ryan and Sue, were trying to pull some old friends back into running, and they pulled myself and Erin might have got sucked up in that, and they had a little bit of a Baltimore Running Festival. There's a big marathon, a half marathon, a 10K event in Baltimore every year. So I met Erin at that event, and it was about a week after we had just launched our app. So it's really good timing.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's something about the running, like the marathon, like life is like a marathon, and like literally. So how we pace our energies and spirits and to go through, to go through life and do things. That's great.
And not to extend the metaphor too far, but I think there's a strong connection too between the marathon analogy you just used, Gianni, and like what we're doing in education. Like the goal is the same, to run 26 miles. Doesn't matter if you do it in 4 hours because you're qualifying for Boston, or if it takes you 24 hours, or if you're a para athlete, or if you're an athlete serving athlete, you're still accomplishing the goal. It's just the tools, the techniques, the training might be different, but the end goal is the same. Kind of like we're all here because we want to create lifelong independent learners. And so I've been noodling on that, the marathon, the kind of the running analogy, because that's what connected Brian and I today and how it fits into education. But I think it's a great model to talk about special education and neurodiversity and ed tech and how it can support learners of all different types, paths, strengths, opportunities on that marathon of education.
On the marathon. Yeah, and for learners, it's a marathon too. No matter who you are, and being able to learn lifelong, it's never ending too.
Like the marathon, mile 20.
Yeah, after never one marathon, you have another one. So multiple. That's great.
True marathoners just keep going.
Yes, never ending.
Yeah.
Great. So, all right, and ending on that marathon analogy, and Storytime AI is bringing the kind of the marathon back to younger generations, the kids who are hungry for personalized stories, and hopefully that can be read by their parents or by their teacher in their school. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly is the Storytime AI and what exactly you're hoping to achieve through this
Sure,
AI-backed tool?
yeah, absolutely. I got caught up when ChatGPT came out, like a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people. I think everyone got a crash course in 20 about AI, whether we liked it or not. We've all become sort of pseudo AI experts, and it really was kind of the Wild West in 2020. And a lot of entrepreneurs kind of came out of the gate trying to build different things, sort of in a vacuum. And what we tried to do, and I'll talk about that vacuum and the importance of Erin here in a second, but what we tried to do was we tried to take the idea of personalization. AI is very good for allowing people to, whether it's sort of personalized tutoring or personalized pathways for content. And I see a lot of companies out there in education technology going down that route, which is a very good one and a very powerful way to use AI. But what we decided to do, Scott Quinlan and myself, as we co-founded this business, is we wanted to take AI and do something that could scale very, very quickly, but also be fun and have impact. And what we landed on was kids' books. It's very good at building kids' books. But what we wanted to do was take it a couple levels higher, because we wanted to really have a number of different, what we call sort of a multimodal approach. So a number of different AI models, whether they're language models, image models, soon to be video models with companies like Runway ML, Pika, being able to do personalized movies is coming very quickly, a voice, a number of different things, and put them all together and be able to sort of sub out the best technologies on the AI side and not have the end users have to worry about that, but us put it all together, put a nice wrapper on it, and then be able to also add different elements that make it safe and ethical and easy to use for parents, have utility for teachers. And that's really was our goal. And we started out thinking this would be a great tool for parents. We thought it might have some impact for teachers. And then I happened to be lucky enough to meet Erin here, and she introduced me to the world of what she's doing, and specifically in the Gateway School. And I'll turn it over to Erin here, maybe to just talk about the power of that partnership and that sort of, serendipitous moment that we met each other. And she introduced me to a number of different things, including social stories, where, we didn't really necessarily build the app for that, but we quickly realized it was an incredible use case, and she was able to help me there, and certainly a number of other areas as well.
Yeah. And also, Erin, before you share that, maybe the audience want to know what Gate School is and what Gate School trying to do. And then that could be the context.
So the Gateway School is a school for kids with autism or autism-like disorders, and we're K through 8. And something that I've been really proud of is that Gateway School was founded in special education wasn't codified in federal statute until 19. So we've been doing special education before special education was even a thing that the government said you kind of had to do, because we knew that there was the need in the community. And we are 90, I keep saying 97, I think we're 98 years old now. We're 98 years old, and we have always been able to be nimble and responsive to that community need. So what we do is we accept students from all over Maryland who come into our school who need to work on their communication and their language. So we're a communication first school. We have kids who will graduate from high school with Maryland State Department of Education diplomas. We have some students that will be eligible for special education through age 21. So we have a lot of diversity in our student population, but they are all working on this kind of the tenet that communication matters. And if you can communicate effectively, it will help us meet our vision of a world where everybody can understand and be understood. Because I don't know, personally, I just feel like there's some social justice need there, that if we can all communicate our wants and needs effectively, like the world would be a much happier and better place. So students come into us with individualized education plans, and that is part of the typical special education program. So it is not a one-size-fits-all curriculum. Students who come into our school still have to meet standards that the state puts out so that they can move from grade to grade and matriculate from 8th grade to high school. But the how and how that instruction is provided is extremely individualized. So I was fortunate enough to have Brian in for a tour, I think in December. It feels like forever ago now. But we were able to observe a classroom, and every kid in the classroom was working on the same lesson, but in a completely different way, with a different set of materials, with a different type of instruction, with different instructional aids. And that, I think, is why this partnership between the Gateway School and Storytime AI has been working and will continue to work, because historically, educational products are not as nimble and responsive as we as educators need them to be, nor as nimble and responsive as AI is right now. So Brian was in the classroom. He knows that typically when you buy a curriculum, and especially in the speech language pathology world or the special education world, you buy kits. You buy a kit from a vendor. They update it once every 3 to 5 years if you're lucky for new words or new research comes out. And that was cutting edge until AI came around. And so our ability as an institution to be nimble and responsive to community need is something I'm proud of. And I think the Storytime AI product allows us to provide our students truly with that individualized education that they are not only just entitled to, but they deserve. And so that's why this works, because it's not a kit out of the box. It's fully customizable and allows our teachers, our therapists, our parents to get done what they need to get done for the students in real time. And that's huge in the education space.
Yeah. Johnny, if I could just add too, it's rare for me as an entrepreneur to see partnerships like this exist. I was lucky to get it, especially in an early stage company, and we're very early stage. We just launched our app here in the first week of October. So it's very important and it's very rare. And one thing I would urge listeners to, if they're ed tech entrepreneurs or if they're educators, is those partnerships on both sides I think are really interesting, because for me, I'm getting to pivot. I always say, and any entrepreneur needs to be ready to pivot and probably pivot almost weekly. And what I've been able to do with Erin is listen to needs and run something fire, and able to weave that into many of the pivots that we've made, and we've made quite a few already in just the last couple of months. When you're in that first stage, especially those first couple of months, I said earlier in the introduction that a lot of entrepreneurs right now in AI are building AI products in a vacuum. I think 23 was a year of just building because you could build, and AI was so cool. And now 24 is really rubber meets the road. What's the true utility? And are you actually helping with AI? And I know with AI, there's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of fear. And I think that, having a partnership as an ed tech entrepreneur with Erin and with the Gateway School, it's a rare thing that's already having tremendous impact. So yeah, I think it's something that's worth stating. I think it's interesting to your viewers that it's really does have a big need, because if you're not building for an actual problem and something that you're solving with in educators, then obviously you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, I think Brian, you brought a very interesting and important message, is that sometimes when we build tools and technology, we most times lose sight of the context, because we as builders sometimes don't know exactly how people are using that in their particular, environment and what purpose. And just like me, when we're working with like Blackboard or Canva, D2L in the higher ed space, sometimes I just wish, when they designed the product, they could have brought some consultant coming from the higher ed environment, just tell them exactly how they're going to use this tool to do teaching and learning. And that will save so much trouble down the road, because we have to navigate, and we wish the system can be more intuitive. So that's, if everybody can partner, have an early partnership from the very beginning, that's great benefit for learners and educators out there. Now let's kind of coming from that like macro space and more dig into those micro space. And I've used Storytime AI a little bit. For me, what I've been trying is, I know there's like a prompt, so I put in who does what in what situation and fill in the stories, and a little bit cultural elements come to play as well. How is AI doing that? Like how is this taking place? What's the magic behind it?
Brian, you'd get that one, because my answer would be magic. That's all I know.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit of magic. I think that the elves behind the scenes are making the books, for people maybe. But what we're doing right now is we're taking a language model, what's called an LLM, large language model, and we are sort of introducing the idea of prompting to a younger audience as well. So we're breaking down theme, plot, characters. We can insert vocabulary, themes like friendship, and it will weave it throughout the story. It sends that out. We're using OpenAI right now, like many people. Quite frankly, we're building the application in a way that we'll be able to be best of breed. If there's an open source learning LLM that is able to do something that OpenAI is not, or better, or less expensive, we're in a position where we're going to be able to sub out the best of breed technologies and then make it easier for the end user to just have immediate access to that. So we're getting that, we're combining it. What happens is when the text comes back, we're then able to take that text per paragraph and do what's called an image prompt. And that's taking a smaller description of what's in that text and saying, build an image with this short sentence or two, basically. It's sending that over to an image model, which is very different than the language model. And we're right now using an open source, we're big proponents of open source system called Stable Diffusion. And that's where we're getting our images from. And we're looking at other open source solutions for things like voice cloning, so you can have grandma read that story if you like, or also some of the video technologies we talked about here as well. So we're basically taking little bitty pieces and we're putting them all together, and then we're applying also things like pedagogy around reading, because this is a literacy play. It's also an inclusion play. So the image models where they were 6 months ago are much better than they were. Better now, obviously, than they were 6 months ago, and they're improving weekly. So, where we may have had certain image models that weren't great for a specific region or a specific culture, we're looking at testing constantly to try to improve that, and we're certain that that's going to improve a lot this year. So it's really for us right now to sort of demystify all the technical, put it in a little bit of an easier wrapper to use, put it all together, add in educational pedagogy, but safety, NSFW type stuff as well. And we have a number of those things integrated into the product.
That's great. We can dig deeper into the specific topics under the bigger umbrella of reading literacy and safety and ethics. So in terms of the application and implementation, Erin, when you are introducing Storytime AI into the classroom, how exactly are teachers and students using the Storytime AI, and for what purposes? I'd be curious.
So in the special education world, there's a whole movement about social stories. So social stories are tools that parents, teachers, therapists traditionally had to manually create in order to help students with special needs understand what a novel environment would be. So for example, if Brian had never been to the zoo, I would, as a therapist, before the zoo field trip, in order to make Brian successful in his trip to the zoo and understand that it's going to smell weird, that some animals are going to be big, that some animals are going to be small, that some you might be allowed to pet, some you're not going to be allowed to pet. We're going to have to ride a bus to get there. No, you can't get cotton candy because we're on a field trip. Like all of the stuff that you have to kind of back map into a task analysis to have a successful field trip, job interview, riding a bus for an individual with special needs, we would have to create as therapists, physically create our own books. So back in the day, I would spend time with, if we were lucky, you could buy a program that was a little bit fancier than clip art, and you could I would literally spend time at a copy machine, photocopying pictures out of books, sitting in grad school with colored pencils and making these stories to say, this is what Brian's experience at the zoo is going to be like. Because everything we learn as people, as humans, starts with ourselves and then moves outward. Individuals with special needs, especially those with autism, occasionally just need extra level of support, increased visual supports that increase personalization to have successful trips to the zoo. Take that metaphor as far as you want it to go. So what we've been able to do in the Gateway School is use Storytime AI as that social story platform so that when our students are going on these field trips, going out for community-based instruction, having a new student come into their class, having a new therapist come, our therapists can quickly program into the app the name of the kid, the demographic information, in the theme that they want it to be in. Many students with special needs are really attracted to anime because of the exaggerated features, so it's easier to read the facial expressions. All of that work that I did in graduate school with the copy machine, with the paper, with my card, paying 10 cents a page to make these things, Storytime AI, I was so grateful to be able to pass along that information to the therapist and the team to say, hey guys, you don't have to do that anymore. Because like I was saying with that toolkit model, we were still operating in that toolkit model. Like, oh, I've got to buy this kit and I'll make it work. Storytime AI makes it work. And it also allows us to provide the intervention in that for the social stories, like on the fly. So if it's, oh poop, the gym isn't available today, so we have to do indoor recess in the classroom instead of the gym because it's cold out, we can go boop, boop, and educate the student on what their experience is going to be like before they go to the next activity to decrease stress, increase awareness and learning, and just create a more successful environment where students are physically showing up to learn and are ready to learn. I mean, if you are distracted, if any of us were distracted right now, I just had a kid walk by. I got distracted for a minute. That distraction takes away from your learning or your engagement. Social stories limits those distractions because we're coming at it at that high level and saying, here are all all the things that you might encounter if you're Brian going to the zoo. And that is why we're finding it so effective, because it's meeting the students where they are, which is our number one goal in special education, while also taking away some of that administrative burden from the therapists so they can get their jobs done quicker and more efficiently. And for me as the administrator, I'm like, because it's a win-win for us. So when we were sitting around our friend Sue's living room and Brian showed me the app and I said, oh, this is like a social story. He's like, what's that? It just felt like a very serendipitous moment, because we as as a community of therapists and teachers and educators and parents had that need that was previously unmet. And that's why this is going to work, because there's an unmet need, there's going to be the demand, and it's going to be a win-win for kids with special needs and beyond.
Now I got curious. So the social story learning, that takes a lot of detailed planning. It feels like you're the director, right? You're the director, you're directing the stories. There must be a lot of like minute details. Will the technology able to help you to like fine tune those details? How much exact control do you have over the stories and the details of those
Yeah, great
scenarios
question.
that you create?
Yeah, fantastic question. And also, Erin, I did not realize that about the anime style, because we've trained the image models to do different styles, and each of those different styles are getting better. They're getting updates. We just did an update last week specifically on anime. Scott will be psyched to hear that you have, a specific need for anime. I did not know that. That's really interesting. And specifically about the facial features, because Scott and I were talking about mirroring and the importance to see the actual emotion on the face of different characters. So, Johnny, to answer your question, the answer is the control is improving, right? It's going at lightning speed right now. We're also looking to add in different tools for editing so that we have some tools already for that. So if you don't like an image as a teacher, you can hit recreate and it will just reprop the image model and give you a new image. So we are adding some of those features in so that you can have more control of the stories. We're also adding in things like a collection of stories. I think it's important to note when you talk about what Erin just said, that's so big. My mom was a teacher, and I remember her up all night grading papers, things that she would just hand my brother and I, and she would say, grade these papers. And I was 8, but I could grade them. So, if I could grade the papers, it probably wasn't a good use of her time, as a teacher. And everything that I've tried to do in my career in education technology is how we free teachers up so that they can truly teach and just facilitate and get out of the administrative busy work. So great point by Erin there to identify. That's really one of the key tenets of where we see this having impact, is that idea that, you are still involved in teaching, but you have a tool that's going to be able to help you and free you up to spend more quality time, more personalized time, which is so important with children with special needs in the classroom. So I think that's an important element. And I think it's also important to note that this is just one piece of a very robust set of curriculum that's being put, those IEPs, that individual education plan, is a tenet, as Erin said, of all special needs education. And, when you look at those, this is just a small piece of that. So one of the things that I got the idea here, and speaking with Erin from some of the feedback, is not just to have the tool, but what's the accompanying curriculum? So we're beginning to build open source curriculum that's associated with public stories or canned stories that will be easy to be able to what we call remix, so that Erin can go in there and just have her teacher remix a collection of 24 stories that are about a specific set of character strengths, or they may all be professions. We have a category we're building right now with one of our interns. Ellie is just building all of these different professions. Representation matters. If you see it, you can be it. It'll be your own hero. That does have a major impact in the confidence of a child. So we're looking at building curriculum that goes with it so that the real world meets the digital world. You might not just read a story, we're also adding videos in, so those books will turn into personalized literacy read-along type videos where maybe they can't read, but they can listen to the story and they can see the words going across the bottom of the video. So that's coming out in a couple of weeks based on feedback that we've gotten on the product. But we're also looking to add curriculum, because what we're doing here is just sort of one piece of it. So I think the power is emerging, Gianni, to answer your question. And I think we'll continue to see iterations of that in 2025 with the product roadmap we have. But I also think it's important to note that this is sort of just, getting the student engaged and excited in the reading, and because they see themselves and it's at their actual name, where it's being remixed with them and their features, and then the physical curriculum that you can associate with it. I think we continue to iterate with feedback from Erin and her team at Gateway and other schools we'll be working with this year.
Excellent. And as products always improve as the large language model improve, and I also hear about like small language model, like there's all kinds of iterations and evolutions going on so fast, so quick. That actually gets me interested to ask this question. It's more from like the pedagogy or the andragogy perspective. People talk about that all the time. Like, what is personalized learning? Erin, coming from the special ed perspective, how does your industry define personalized learning, and what are some typical strategies that caters to that need?
I think that the answer is going to sound probably very political in that it depends. So personalized learning is providing the education that each child needs to be the best, most independent version of themselves, whatever that is going to be. And something that we know from science and research is that humans learn everything with themselves first, and it goes outward. So to Brian's point about the curriculum and the language and the literacy piece of it, from the child development perspective, from the human development perspective, we learn pronouns. Me and I come before she, her, they, them from the language perspective. And so being able to provide this highly personalized experience, the social story piece for special education is huge for me. But I don't want to not give the typical education space, the language literacy space, its due and what impact Storytime AI can have in that space. Because when you can take concepts that students are struggling with and make it personal, it will allow them to generalize that learning, that concept, that new word, that pronoun to other situations, other settings, other tests, so that then they can master it and have it as part of their daily vocabulary. And so that the notion that, even something like pronouns, many students learn organically. Many kids pick it up. But if you are either fortunate or unfortunate to have like a toddler or a young child in your life, which thankfully I no longer have children of that age range. I'm blessed to have 2 teenagers, which comes with a whole different set of challenges. Everything human development tells us is you start kind of very egocentric and then you move outwards. And so finding where students fall along that continuum is what, to me, personalized and individualized education is here's the goal and the objective that's been agreed upon by sometimes the student, sometimes the family, the therapist, speech language pathologist, the combination of folks, making sure that everybody has input to what the students' needs are, and being able to do little tweaks here and there to make them successful and independent learners. But starting with themselves and moving outward and figuring out where folks fall is my definition of that individualized learning, and not going too far back. If someone can, going back to the marathon analogy, if someone can run a 10-minute mile, you encourage them to run a 10-minute mile. If they can run a 7-minute mile, you encourage them to run a 7-minute mile. And those goals are modified sometimes throughout the educational journey, throughout the race, depending on what sort of supports you have or cheerleaders you have in your course.
I'll just add one thing onto that, if you don't mind, Gianni, is just to say AI is, for the first time, I think, really changed the ability for us to consider doing personalized learning in a cost-effective way. It's always been a goal of educators to offer some level of personalized learning in almost every grade level. And from what I've seen, the online, the learning management systems that we've talked a little bit about on this, Blackboard, your Moodle, your Canvas, your D2L, those have been sort of the beginning of offering personalized content journeys that people can go at different paces. But that has limitations. And I think that it's also maybe not as robust, as AI is now. We're getting to a spot where I think AI has opened the door for very low cost personalized learning that, again, frees up educators to facilitate more than they do admin work, and to create curriculum and to tweak curriculum and some of these things that were just bogging them down and making it very hard and very tiring to be a teacher. I think AI is going to help open the door to more personalized learning than we've ever had before.
Yeah, and I think in the specific sense here, it's like a content personalization. It's helping learners to create a personal connection with the stories, with the content that they're learning, and leveraging that content or the social stories to help people understand better of a particular vocabulary, what that means, a particular task, what that means, process, a procedural concept, and helping them to kind of understand from the first person perspective, and hopefully create more stronger neural links or connections in their brain, hopefully retain it better and able to transfer that understanding to and apply that to other situations.
Yes, I think you nailed it, Gianni. That's what we're both doing, both Gateway School and Storytime AI, and the magic will be when we I don't know, just revolutionize special education, because you're right. That is, and education in general, because when stuff is meaningful to us as humans, we're more likely to remember it, to care about it, to generalize it. And this is the way to provide students and teachers with that customization, which is just going to promote that learning and generalization.
Yeah, Jenny,
Yes.
and I think what's really fun about the AI movement, it's, I've talked a little bit about the fear there too, and I think it's, justified. I think that it's always scary to see new technologies, and are students going to lose the ability to, to write, and, are they going to still, even do anything without AI, and where's the line there? There are solutions that are looking to solve that. Cursive Technologies is one based here in Baltimore that I've worked a little bit with, that is trying to use machine learning to really prove what is the actual authorship. So I think there will be solutions that address some of the fear, but I think the excitement and the really sort of the early adopters right now of the technology are seeing the potential to really get out there and personalize learning in a way. But I think what we're doing is really just one small piece of it. I think if you look at the Gateway School and what Erin's doing, there'll probably be many solutions that are a part of this. And I think what we're doing is really just one small piece of what will be a lot of different solutions that sort of come on the market this year. So very exciting time by the world of AI to maybe get out there and do this. I want to throw one other quick story. I actually forgot. I forgot that this is as interesting as this for this topic, but I went to college at Evergreen State, a college in Washington State, and it's a pretty famous school in the fact that it doesn't have grades. I actually finished up school there, and you get to sometimes build your own semester where you can decide, I want to, it's famous for, really weird things. Like I want to follow the Grateful Dead and write papers about, sociology or something like that. And as long as you can come up with a really good sound curriculum that, is personal to you, that has, academic merit, they allow you to do it as long as you get an academic sponsor to facilitate and to keep you honest and to keep you accountable. So I was an astrophysics undergrad, it was kind of fun place to do it because I found a sponsor, a woman named Dr. Zita, and she allowed me to build my own curriculum and to come up with some things I wanted to work on in the summer, and then she sponsored it. But it was a very hard thing to do. It took a lot of back and forth with her and I, and to build what the curriculum was. Now with LLMs, you could go in and say, I'd like to do this. What do you recommend? It could start to spit out some ideas and really speed that process up. So I think that, the model at Evergreen is very experimental. It's considered relatively fringe in terms of colleges in the United States, cutting edge and fringe and really interesting place. But I think you'll see more of that as I think that's new. And I think AI is really going to give colleges and universities a chance to maybe, reinvent and disrupt the way that you've seen education done. So I've kind of almost forgotten until you guys started talking about that, journey, that I used to have the ability to do that in undergrad. I guess I'm getting to that age where I forgot what it was like in college, but
Well,
we'll see more of that.
Exciting thing, Brian, is that I'm seeing that trickle down to the middle school and high school world with my own kids. So
That's cool.
The school that my 8th grader's in, she has to meet the standards for 8th grade, matriculation to 9th grade, the State Department of Education. But many of her teachers allow her to choose how she's most confident demonstrating her learning, which is not something kids who need to access kind of curriculum in a different way, but they give her that choice. And when you have that choice and that agency, isn't that what we all want as learners? And so she has to, she is reading novels in her English class, but then she gets to decide if she wants her final exam to be verbal, written, performative, multiple choice, short answer, because the teachers understand that the how is irrelevant. What you need to know is that the kid got the concepts. And so hopefully what Evergreen did, that was fringe and revolutionary. I don't know how many years ago, because I think we're close to the same age. Hopefully we get to the point where that's not fringe, that is encouraged, because then the learning is so much more meaningful than if it's just, I don't remember what I did senior year of college. Sorry, Loyola University. I don't remember. So the fact that you remember means it was meaningful, and that's what matters.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. We're moving away from that sage on the stage mentality, and we're flipping it sort of into more of a social constructivist pedagogy where learners are creating their own learning. Right. And I think AI is going to open the door. And I always look at it, again, from the eyes of my mom, who is a teacher. Teachers are so inundated with so much admin work and so much work that they just sometimes don't have the energy to really personalize education. But I think for each individual student, it's very difficult. I learned a lot at the Gateway School, and I saw it was a true one-to-one teacher to student. Right, Erin? I mean, for the most part, that's the ratio that you're very close to that in almost every classroom. And that's rare, right? That's very hard you don't see a lot of that in traditional traditional education. And I think that with AI, you're going to be able to see something closer to that, where a teacher has more time, ideally, if they're freed up, to be able to personalize and really inspire each individual student to kind of go after their passion and what they're interested in, which is going to engage that learner in a way that I don't think we've seen. I mean, a lot of the dings on traditional education tend to be from people that find it boring or they don't want to be there, right? As a student, I felt that way, when I was younger, and I think we might have a chance to change it now. So it's exciting times.
And that reminds me of how the origin of education was really developed to train people to get into the workforce. And so if potentially standardize the development and line the development of human to workforce, then that's considered as job done. But as the world starts changing and human and curiosity and our motivation, and so on a level, and how can we leverage the education, with the technology that we have to personalize that and tap into your innate motivation and let you to design your own curricula. That's kind of like a micro PhD right there. You're like, you develop your own curriculum thesis, and you have your advisor as your academic sponsor and help you to go through and keep it rigorous and accountable. Impressive. Now let's take a turn. So no, we've been talking about the bright, optimistic side of AI and learning and personalized learning, how that can potentially revolutionize the world of learning. What are some potential considerations? Like, if you generating images for kids or for adults for whatever purpose that you want it to be, how would you make it safe? How would you ensure that accidental damage is not done?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, we take that very seriously. Right now, we have about 3 layers of banned word filters is the first thing. We also have some filters on the LLM side. If something comes back, even if the input wasn't in the banned words, if it comes back with anything that is remotely unsettling, then that is going to be flagged and won't come through. On the image side, same thing. It's using a set of banned word filters, but it also has what's called an image classifier. It can actually look at each individual image. It does look at each image individually, and if there's anything at all, it will just blur it out. And honestly, at times, it's probably even for sure, it's sometimes flagging images that shouldn't be flagged, but we've got it set up in a way that that's to be expected, and we continue to monitor that because we want to have an abundance of caution there. So you have image classifiers, you have a very traditional way, which is just banned word filters, and we have several layers of each of those on the platform. So definitely very important to have that, and so far we've been, knock on wood, we've had no issues with that at this stage.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Swiss cheese model, like you have multi layers of
it is, and the tech wasn't there on the image classifiers even 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It was still being battle tested, but now it's very sound. So I think everybody in the industry and a lot of the providers, they knew that they had a choice to make, right? They were either going to, stay on that side and protect their reputation, which is really important when some of these bigger AI companies are trying to build very large organizations with, doing a lot of different things. So they've put a lot of focus and a lot of their priorities on the image side, on that safety. That's crucial, I think, for them to exist as the market continues to develop. And it's been good for us.
That's great. So as we conclude this conversation, and I would like to kind of bring our audience a step closer to you as a magical human being behind the scenes, making everything happen. And what did you enjoy doing when you were, say, what was your passion back then? Brian, let's start with you.
I had a bunch of them. I was probably running around in the woods quite a bit. I was always pretty adventurous. Always. I think I got probably 2 things that probably defined me back then. I think I had a lot of empathy. I was probably a little bit of an overly sensitive kid, if I'm being honest. I probably still am, to be really honest. But I think I developed a lot of empathy. I think I probably got a lot of that from my parents and a lot of a sense of adventure, which I also got more of my dad than my mom. I think she would agree with that. But I think those 2 things were probably, you'd find me making friends and being with my friends and being out in the woods, just kind of playing every sport I could. And not necessarily great at it back then, but out there doing it anyway. So I think that's probably what you find me doing back at that age.
Excellent. I see connection between now and then.
Yeah, kind of fair. True.
So Erin, how about you?
Oh gosh. So I discovered my passion for performing and entertaining when I was in middle school, when I was in 8th grade. Well, so when I was in 5th grade, I was pegged to be Gretel in The Sound of Music because I was the shortest kid who tried out. And so I got to be the youngest Von Trapp kid because I was the shortest. But then by the time 8th grade came around, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with somebody from the Metropolitan Opera in New York who came out to our middle school because I grew up in a rural coal mining town in North Jersey. And we had a producer who would come out and work with us weekly. And so in 8th grade, I produced, directed, and starred in an original opera. It was terrible. I mean, this thing was terrible. Like middle school kids should not be allowed to write an opera. But I think that opportunity really kind of got me excited about storytelling, about advocating, about kind of say it with confidence, people will believe you, which really set me up to kind of have these professional opportunities and be comfortable with them. Like I love telling the story of Gateway School through this sort of platform. I really find it energizing and invigorating. And so I'm excited that we were able to do this today.
That's excellent. So what do you think is your magic then, Erin?
Gosh, my magic. So I don't know if it's my magic, but something that I'm using as a guiding principle for 20 is creating opportunities for mission-based joy. And what that means for me is I just think that the world is heavy, the world is hard, and joy and creating opportunities for joy is something that I'm really investing time and energy in 2020, but doing it with a purpose. You know, it might be I don't know, I can't think of the word that I want it. It's like my excuse to do it, as if I don't give myself permission just to have fun for fun. But mission-based joy for me is, you know, something that I'm excited about is there's a chapter of the Alzheimer's Association in Baltimore, and they have a Dancing with the Stars themed event. And I somewhere between was asked to dance and might have stood up at the event last year and was like, I'll do it. So I am going to be a dancer for a cause in April. I have friends who this past year ran a series of 5Ks that were all philanthropically motivated. So typically, candidly, my rule for race running is if it has beer afterwards, I show up. That was my barometer, was if there was beer, I will pay the fee and run the race. This year, I think I want to look better at my race schedule and say which of these opportunities is going to bring me joy, but also have some mission alignment to charities or people, communities that I want to invest my time in. So 20 for me is mission-based joy.
Fulfilled joy. Joy from fulfillment. I love that. I have so much to say about that. But because of time limit, we'll pause there. But I hear you and I see you, Erin. So there's a resonance right there. Brian, you're laughing. What's your magic?
Oh, that's amazing. I did not know about that, Dancing with the Stars here in Baltimore. That's pretty exciting, Aaron. That's, pretty, I mean, is it competition? Before we get into mine, are you actually competing?
Well, I mean, I'll say yes, but no, because my dance partner, Amanda, and I were winning. So I'm going to say, like, it's not really a competition because no one's going to be able to keep up with us. But yes, it's a competition. And it's philanthropic. So last year, the Alzheimer's Association of Greater Maryland raised $1 million at the event alone. And this year they want to raise one. And so we have committed to kind of helping support them. But those dance lessons are bringing me so much joy. I have cleared out my living room, I put my AirPods in, and I dance around to our song, which I will keep a secret. But yeah, no, Brian, I'm going to hit you up now. Sue's coming. Not to make this personal and about us, but
all right.
What's your magic, Brian?
Man, that's a good question. I think my magic is I think I really do enjoy what I'm doing. I think that helps a lot. I think if you love what you're doing, I think you end up being very good at it. I think I read an article a long time ago. If you want to be successful, find what you love to do and then do it, and it won't really feel like work. There are days things like this feel like work, and then there are days I have conversations with someone like Erin here, and I realize that what we're doing matters and has impact. I think that this year, I think that's my magic, because I think that it's a sense of openness and adventure, and I think empathy towards people, because I think that when you look at education, which has been a big, obviously, part of all of our careers, so seeing the impact and seeing what it can do to people is very rewarding. So I think this year I've spent some time thinking about the whys, like why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think that the other thing I thought a lot about is community, right? I think about this podcast, and I think about meeting people with like Erin and collaborating and going to events we have here in Baltimore, like Upsurge and, entrepreneurial communities. And really just, I think if anything over the last couple of years, I think we've learned is the importance of community. And I think the importance of that has been very evident to me here, especially in the last couple of years. So I think I've decided just to put more energy towards that. And I think, many different ways, but this is a good example of that, and good to talk to you both here tonight.
It has been such a engaging, happy, soulful, pedagogical, technological conversation that we had today. And I think conversations like this connect me to my mission and the goal that I wanted to achieve for the community and for the learning, development, and ed tech entrepreneurs and wellness entrepreneurs out there. I'm just so grateful. I'm a little bit speechless, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your story and your passion with us. And one day, if you were allowed, I wanted to watch you dance, Erin, and if that's on YouTube or somewhere, just definitely share that with us, and I would be happy to be your loyal audience.
Be careful what you offer, Gianni. I tend to take people up on stuff like that.
Go ahead.
Amazing.
Yeah, and Gianna,
So,
thanks for doing this podcast also. I think it's there's not a lot of ed tech and education type podcasts out there, and I think what you're doing is fantastic. So wishing you the best of luck with this, and excited to see what you're able to continue to put out here in 2020.
thank you very much.